Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to start off video 2 of our Basics to CNC series. Now, today we got to focus on a couple things. We're going to assume that you got a machine and you've got it set up. Now you need to ask yourself, what's next? I've got this thing set up and I need a project. Well, in order to do these projects, you got to be able to hold your stuff down to the machine. So we're going to focus on work holding today. And also we're going to be doing some design in our VCarve Pro program. Now, I understand that not everybody's going to have this program, but that's okay because the overall design concept and the way that things are done with these CAD programs is generally the same. So you should get a good idea of how to design things, the tooling that you need, how to work a tool path, all that good stuff. So if you stay tuned, we're going to get to it. Alright guys, so as you can see out here on the table, I've got a few things. This is some of the stuff that you might need to start this project if you decide to do it the way that I'm going to show you. You're going to need some 1/4 to 20 bolts, you're going to need some washers, you're going to need some 1/4 20 T-nuts, you're going to need some 3/4 inch stock, and something like this possibly. I'll show you what this is used for here in a minute. We'll get rid of this for now. So to start with, our 3/4 inch stock. If you just go to Lowe's, Home Depot, you can get poplar, pine, oak, and you can buy it in a 5.5 by 24 inch board. And if I remember correctly, once we get into actually designing this, that's the general size that I use to start with. And what you should end up with when you're done is basically just a rectangle with a slot cut in it, a hole on one end with a nut in it, and a rabbet cut in the end of that. So this is a pretty simple design for a hold down. Now, one thing I didn't mention in the last video of some things that you should buy to get started was some double-sided tape. When I first started, I used double-sided tape for everything, and it does work, but I wanted a more permanent solution that I didn't have to keep spending money on, and something that I didn't have to do as much work. Because with a double-sided tape, you have to cut, stick, peel. It's just a pain in the butt. But for your first couple projects, this might come in handy. Now, where can you get this? I went to Lowe's in the tape aisle. This is like a double-sided duct tape. They also make double-sided carpet tape. And I'm sure you can get it on some websites that sell stuff for CNC and whatnot. But you might want to pick up a roll of this stuff for your first project. Aside from the hold downs, the second thing we're going to discuss is our wasteboard, and this is what the hold downs are going to connect to. Now, I'm not going to go through and design a wasteboard in this video because I have another one that I made where I go through in detail on how to make this. I'll put a link at the bottom in the description so you can watch that video and get an idea of how to make a wasteboard. The basic concept is you put your stock on the board. This will go next to your stock, and then your bolt goes in and it holds it down. You tighten it and it won't move. So pretty simple concept. What you're going to need also is probably a sheet of MDF, maybe even just a half sheet if you don't want to buy a full one. MDF is pretty common as wasteboard material. It's not super expensive, and I bought a full sheet when I bought my machine. I've made 3 or 4 separate wasteboards now, and I still have a ton of it left, so it'll last you a while as long as you take care of it. Anyway, so wasteboard, hold downs, that's the focus of today. So let's get inside, we'll get on the computer into VCarve, and we'll show you how you make this stuff. Okay, now one thing I did forget to mention is another bit that you're going to need. And this right here is going to be a 1-inch surfacing bit. This one's made by Whiteside. It runs you about $33. And this is one bit that you're going to need. You're not going to use it a whole lot, but you're going to find that you have to have it. The reason you have to have it is, what good does it do to have a machine with a surface that's not completely flat? You're going to end up with horrible cuts. So what this is going to do is it's basically going to be put into a tool path where you run it across every surface of your wasteboard, and it's going to level it completely. You can't get away with not having one of these, really. If you do, you're either extremely lucky and have a perfectly flat board, which I doubt is going to happen, or you're using a 1/4 inch bit, and it's going to take you forever. This is going to take off a lot bigger chunk than a 1/4 inch bit. So we'll explain how surfacing works, and I'll show you a real easy way to create a toolpath in VCarve or any other program to actually surface your wasteboard.
Alright guys, we're back at the computer and we have Vectrix VCarve Pro up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here like we usually do and create a new file. So for this file we're going to use a piece of wood that's 24 inches long by 5.5 inches wide, which is going to be your common size for your big box store wood that you buy that's 1/2 inch. Once again, 1/2 inch. And you'll have to excuse me, I believe in the beginning of the video I said we're using 3/4, but that was wrong. So we'll click OK, and it's going to pull up our work area here. Alright, so first thing we need to do is we need to decide how big do we want these hold downs. Well, I've got a couple different sizes, and I think somewhere right in the middle is probably pretty good. So we're going to start with this right here. We're going to draw a rectangle. What do we want it? 5 inches long, or wide if you will, and 1 inch tall. And we'll create it. Pretty simple. Alright. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to design one hold down, and then we're going to make copies of it. Now there's several different ways you can do this, but since it's your first time and you're just learning, we're going to do this the easiest way I could think of. Alright, so we've got our basic rectangle of our hold down there. First thing we need to do is, excuse me, we need to make a pocket for the nut that goes in the back. So we're going to come over here to our Draw Polygon tool. We want it to have 6 sides, and I've measured it beforehand, and I know it is a 1/2 inch. Now, the 1/2 inch is going to be, oh, excuse me, not a 1/2 inch. That'd be a 1/2 inch diameter. It's going to be 1/2 inch radius, so it's going to be a 1/4 inch, and that looks a little bit better. Okay, so we're going to take this and we're going to move it up here to the spot where it goes. And here in just a second, I'm going to show you how you center it in there. First thing we need to do, though, is decide how long we want the channel that's going to go in there. So, once again, we're going to get a rectangle tool here. And we know we're going to want it a 1/4 inch high because that's how wide our bolts are. So, 1/4 inch wide. And the length of that channel, we'll just say, is going to be 3 inches. And we'll see how that looks. Close this and get it and bring it over. And, you know, that's pretty good. If you wanted to make it a little longer, you could. A little shorter, you could. I'll tell you what, let's make it just a hair longer. And we'll make it 3 1/4 inches. And we'll call that good. Keep in mind, the length of that channel that's going to go in there is going to give you a little bit more leeway in where you can actually put your hold downs, and that also is going to depend on how far apart the T-nuts are in your wasteboard that you have created. So next thing we need to do is we need to make a hole inside of this for a bolt to go through. So we'll come over here, and we know the bolt's a 1/4 inch, so we'll create. Okay, we're going to take that and we're going to drag it over here. And it should snap to right in the middle of that, which it has. So that's excellent. Alright, now we need to decide if this is going to be closer to the bolt or closer to the end. Well, you're going to put a rabbet in the end of it, probably a 1/4 inch. So you don't want it too close. And it's really just however you want it. There's no absolute has to be done a certain way. But just eyeballing it, that looks good. Alright. So now we want to make sure that these are all centered between this point and this point. So this is how you do it. You're going to click and drag, and then you're going to hold down Shift and click on that. You're going to come over here, and you're going to use the Align to Selection, Center, and it's already centered. Now if you want to see what that looks like if it wasn't, let's go ahead and make it off center. Shift and click this, and then when you click that, it goes straight to center. So now you know how to center things within a vector. Now if I were to click This, it may not center it in the vector, it will center it inside of your entire workpiece, and that's not what you want. So you have to make sure you want it centered inside of something or the piece as a whole. Okay, so now that we've got that done, we need to decide how many of these are we going to fit on this board. Well, there's a couple things you can do. Number one, you can use a function like this where you create a linear array of copies, or you can select the whole thing. You can copy, paste, and then do it however you want. Now, for the ease of doing things, I'm going to do the linear array, but just keep in mind you can do it however you like. So in order to do that, we're going to copy this, or we're going to highlight this whole thing, and we're going to come over here. Now we need to decide a few things. Number one, how many rows are we going to have and how many columns? Well, you have to measure to decide how many are going to fit. But I've already done that beforehand, and we're going to keep this project simple. So 3 rows, and the rows go this way. The columns go this way. So if I have 4 columns, I'm saying I can put 4 of these longwise. Let's see if it'll fit. We're going to center that right in the middle. And perfect, it fits. So now you have copies, see, 3, 6, 9, you got 12 of them, which is more than enough for most any project you're going to do. All right, so now that we've got those centered in there, we need to figure something out. We need to figure out how much space is in between these. Because when you go to cut them out, it's going to make a difference, especially if you want to use tabs to hold them in. So I'm going to see just how much room is in here. And it looks like we got 0.375 inches. All right. Now, I want to spread these out just a little bit. So I'm just highlighting and moving them around a little bit. All right. Next step, we need to group certain things together. And when we go to create our toolpaths, you'll understand why. Now, we're going to cut this whole thing out with an 1/8 inch end mill. We're going to cut these slots with a 1/4 inch end mill. We're going to cut these holes with a 1/4 inch end mill. And we're going to cut the pocket for these nuts with a 1/16 end mill. So what you can go ahead and do is the 2 operations that you're going to do with a 1/4 inch end mill, you can group all those parts together. Well, almost. So first thing, the holes. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on one, then hold the shift button down and click on every single one of them. Okay, then we're going to come over here and you have an ungroup function and a group function. You click on group. Now all those are like one piece. Click on it, they all light up. Okay, next thing we need these slots. So same thing, shift. Click on every single one of them. Okay, come over here and group them together. Same thing with the pockets for the nuts. Oops, you gotta make sure you click on the right piece there. Just take your time. All right, now we will group all those together. And then the last piece is going to be the profile of it. And we will group that together. Okay, so now that we have all the individual pieces grouped together in their separate groups, now we can start creating toolpaths. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create the toolpath for the through holes. Okay, so you're going to come over to toolpaths, and this is going to be either a pocket or a profile. You can do either or. I'm going to do the profile. So for the profile, no, I take that back. We're going to do it as a pocket. All right, so first thing you need to know is start depth. 0 inches is where we want to start, meaning that it's going to be up flush with the top of the board. How deep do we want to cut it? Well, our stock is 1/2 inch, but from the store, it comes a little over 1/2 inch. So just to be on the safe side to make sure it cuts all the way through, we're going to call it 0.510. Okay? Then we need to select a bit. Come over here to select, and we're going to select our 1/4 inch end mill. Since the hole is a 1/4 inch wide, it should fit. The feed rate and the plunge rate. Now you should know what that is by now. The feed rate is how fast it moves in any direction. The plunge rate is how fast it goes up and down. For this, 50 is good. And, you know, there are, if you get online, Wikipedia, a couple other websites, they have suggestions for standard feeds and speeds. But what you're going to find is you're going to make your own decisions based off your experience and just from playing around. So we'll click OK there. We are not going to use a large area clearance tool for this operation, so don't worry about that. And it's going to ask you if you want an offset or raster. For this, it doesn't matter. We're going to keep it offset. And calculate. Now let's go ahead and preview it. And it did what it needed to do. It punched holes right through the board, 1/4 inch wide. All right, we'll go back to our drawing view here. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut our channels. So we're going to come back up here. And just for the heck of it, we're going to rename this to Through Pocket. So we know exactly which one that is. All right, so for our channel, we're going to do the same thing with a profile. We're going to leave it at 5'1", which is a little over 1/2 inch. We already have a 1/4 inch end mill selected. And what we want here is we want to cut the inside of this. If we cut the outside of it, it's going to cut around like this. If you cut the inside, it's going to stay inside the lines, and that's exactly what we want. If we say on the line, it's going to cut on all lines from the center of the bit, and that's not what you want in this case. So let's calculate it. It's going to tell you, hey, it's fixing to cut through. That's all right, that's what you want. And let's go ahead and preview that toolpath. And that's what you're looking at. Perfect. All right, back to our drawing view. Now we need to select the pocket that the nut's going to go in and come up here. But before we do that, we're going to rename this one. We'll just call it bolt slots. Okay. And one thing you can do, and you have to bear with me, I'm used to doing this on my own, not trying to remember what to say when I'm doing it, but one thing I like to do is I like to add the end mill or the size of the tool that's going in there. That way I don't get confused when I actually go to cut the project out. I'll know exactly which tool to put in which tool path. Okay, so now we're going to do the nut pocket. And like I said, it's going to be a pocket. So one thing you have to do is you have to decide how deep you want it, and that's going to be based off of the thickness of the nut. And it's about 0.215, but we're going to go a little deeper. We're going to go 250, just to give it a slight recess and make sure it goes in all the way. So our depth is going to be 250, which is going to go roughly halfway through the board. It's fine. Our tool we're going to use is going to be a very small 16th inch end mill, 60 inch a minute feed rate, and we'll change this to 50 inch a minute plunge. Okay, so it's going to do it in 4 passes. Let's see, you click on edit passes. You never want to do a pass any more than the width of the tool, so that's perfect. And then offset or raster, we're just going to leave it on offset. Calculate that. We're going to reset this whole thing here, and we're going to preview just that toolpath. And if you look, it has, like the toolpath indicates, made a pocket 1/4 inch deep, the shape of the nut. So that should work. All right, so now we got that done. Last toolpath we have is to actually cut this thing out. So we'll come up here to toolpath. Oh, once again, we're going to call that nut pocket 0.06 All right. Now we're going to do a profile toolpath, excuse me. And what this is going to be the cutout. So 5-1, that's how deep it's going to be. Our tool we're going to use for this one is going to be the 1/8 inch end mill, 50 inch a minute, 50 inch a minute plunge rate. That'll work. You might be able to go a little faster. Just keep in mind, softer woods, harder woods, you might need to change it up. We want to cut the outside, as the picture indicates. Okay. Climb convention, you know, when it comes to wood, I haven't really found a whole lot of difference, so I'm not going to mess with that. I'll just leave it on climb cut. All right. Toolpath to add the tabs. Now, VCarve Pro does it automatic, and I'll be honest with you, I have never used this, so this will be my first time. So, add tabs to toolpath, and then it wants to know the length and the thickness of the tabs. Well, I'll tell you what, I think 16th inch might be a little too short, so we'll call it, we'll do 1/8 inch. Whoops. And then a 16th, let's bump that up to whatever 0.0800 is. Now let's edit them. How many do we want? Well, do we really need more than 2 tabs per piece to hold it in? Probably not. So we'll just do 2 and add tabs. There you go. It has added tabs, but I don't know if I want them in the corner. So let's see what happens when we select that. Excellent. I put them on the edges. Perfect. All right, we're going to do that. Calculate it. Hey, it's going to cut through. Okay. Let's reset this, and let's preview all toolpaths. And that's what we end up with. There's our little tabs, and what that's going to do is that is going to hold the piece in, so when it does the final pass, it doesn't pop out and fly around and hit the bit funky. So there you go. That is that simple. Now the last thing we need to do is rename that one right there to cutout 0.125. All right, now we got to save these toolpaths. Now you need to have a place to put them. I put mine on a thumb drive, so before I did this, I already made a folder for them to go into. So here's your Save Toolpath button. And if you remember, I told you could do save 2 at one time. I'll explain a little bit more. Okay, we're going to use a 1/4 inch bit on 2 operations, cutting this little hole and this slot. Now, we can tell the machine to do those at the same time, so we don't have to re-zero or go back to the home position. It'll just do the holes and the slots all in one operation. So the way we do that is we'll click on one of these and we'll click this, and then we can do, and then you click on the other 1/4 inch one, and there you go. It'll put them both right there. Toolpaths to be saved. And what that's going to do is save them as one toolpath. Now, depending on what machine you have, your post processor may be different. Okay, if you have a Shipoko, you're going to use Gerbil inch. There may be a couple more you can use. This is the one I always use. And as you can tell, there are a billion of them to choose from. Different machines, some of them name specific, but there's a billion of them. If you have a Shipoko, Gerbil inch, it'll work for you. All right, so now we're going to save toolpath. Now we need to find our thumb drive here, CNC drive, and this is, well, let me find my folder here, CNC Basics hold down. All right. Now we're going to rename this to 0.25 through hole and slot. Save that. All right. So that toolpath is saved. Next thing, the pocket for the nuts. Save toolpath. And we're going to call that nut pocket 0.0625. It's already there. Click Save. Do the cutout. Save toolpath. Save. Now if we go to our thumb drive, It's here somewhere. There's our 3 toolpaths, and that's it. Now you take it out to your machine, plug it in, and do all your cutting. So that's as simple as it is to design some hold downs, and it's a really good starter project because you're really going to want them and you're going to use them. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to save this just to make sure in case I lose something here. We're going to call it CNC hold down file. All right. Now, I told you I was going to show you how to do man, I can't think. I'm losing my mind here. A surfacing toolpath. All right. So let's say your wasteboard, just for the heck of it, let's say your wasteboard is 30 inches by 15, and it's 3/4 inch thick. All right. So for surfacing a wasteboard, now there's probably several ways to do it. This is the way I do it. And the reason I'm touching on this is because I did not discuss it in the original wasteboard video much. But the way I did it was I just drew a rectangle overlapping the outside of it a little bit, like that. Okay. And then I took that and I ran a pocket toolpath, and I surfaced mine at, a 1/16 of an inch deep. Select my tool, and the tool that I used was an end mill that was 1 inch wide. I never saved it in there, so you can just change the preferences of the tool that's there, and you can add new tools, which that's another video, but it's a 1 inch diameter tool. We go a lot slower when we do that. I think if I remember correctly, I went 35 inches a minute, which is pretty slow, but it works. Click OK and calculate, and that's the toolpath. Now you can do it a couple different ways. If I was you, I would actually do a raster back and forth, recalculate it, and it'd go back and forth like that. So that's how you surface a wasteboard and create a toolpath for it. Pretty simple. So anyway, that's going to be it for today. The next video I put out, hopefully tomorrow, we'll get to the machine and show you the basics of how to zero it out for your project, how to load your files, do your cutting, change tools, and do all that stuff. So anyway, thanks for watching the video. Stay tuned for the next one, and we'll get this project finished.